A cosmic force erased entire worlds with silence, until the galaxy turned to its last hope, humans. From paradox and war, we forged a vessel designed to break the laws of existence itself. We didn't just survive the encounter, we birthed a new kind of life, one that sings in contradiction. But the seeds we planted have started to bloom, and not all of them want to be tamed. Now, humanity must decide, are we guardians of creation, or gardeners of something we no longer control? Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Never before had the Heliant Star Forum sounded so hollow. In the colossal spiral amphitheater, its tiers carved from living crystal where 73 species usually traded coils of starlight songs and pollen-scented cipher ribbons, silence rang, clear and brittle. Even the mural vines that climbed the walls, bioluminescent tapestries that mirrored a delegate's mood, had faded to the color of frozen pearl. At the very center hovered the reason for the hush, a whole reconstruction of the colony Arid in Delta 4. Once a sapphire world girdled by turquoise seas, it was now a hologram of absence, an ink-black wound where a planet ought to spin. Supreme Marshal El-Shari of the Heliant Guard wiped the protective gel from his tactile tendrils, a gesture of despair among his people, then turned opaline eyes toward the gathering. This is the third system in 20 orbits, he said. We have confirmed that the null quenchers erased the planet along with its corona. No baryonic trace, no quantum echo. As though they deleted that coordinate from the universal equation. No murmuring protests followed. Generations of harmony had untrained the forum in outrage. For over 8 millennia, they had believed civilization's elegance could pacify any cosmic whim. They had gentled supernovae, seeded the void with thinking vacuum, grown soft gardens of gravity. But the quenchers attacked a different frontier. They snuffed out the concept of interaction, stripping matter of its right to speak with energy. In their wake yawned a sterile abyss where even time lacked purchase. We are evacuating the literal domes of Kalina Prime, El-Shari continued, yet the vector's velocity has shifted. Projections indicate it will swallow the shining archipelago, heart of the forum, within 312 standard hours. His words struck the hall like pebbles dropped in an empty bell. The Heliants no longer possessed weapons. Weaponry meant dissonance. Dissonance meant pain they had long ago forsworn. They had grown in a utopia where dangers were negotiated by dialogue and engineering, never by resistance. It was curator-archivist Larissa, gossamer-winged envoy of the air nymph Kia, who lifted a slender hand, wings trembling yet voice firm. There exists protocol candle and mist, she said, projecting a braid of ancient sigils into the air. A distress beacon beyond our borders. Last enacted before the Forum Age, when the word enemy still mattered. No one objected. Larissa keyed in coordinates for a world known only as a theoretical footnote, an outer spiral arm of the Milky Way, Class 1-3, a death world, with toxic oxygen air, a climate that flipped magnetic poles more often than Heliant poets penned epics. Earth. Forum treaties forbade contacting ethically unpredictable species, but treaties are written by people, and the void had been an enemy far longer. The beacon flashed outward. A quantum lance slipped through intergalactic static. On Earth, it was late evening. Dr. Aisha Ramirez, duty lead at the Cognitron Orion radio array, was rereading a solar flare bulletin when her control deck flared orange. The universal translator, meant only to sift pulsar burbles, suddenly spat a perfect English ticker. The Heliant SDAR Forum requests aid. Cosmic anomaly, NULL quenchers, threatens all living systems. Conflict specialist required. You are the only known species evolved for this task. Response urgent. Aisha froze as though a thumb pressed between her shoulder blades. 3 minutes later, her voice quavered on the UN Security Council's red channel. This is not spoofing or cipher error. They're speaking faster than we can log packets. Their math is beyond our quantum ASICs. Whoever they are, they're terrified. The next 12 hours became a cyclone. Emergency summits, encrypted lines, heads of state toggling between skepticism and greedy fascination, while physicists rammed raw exabytes of alien constants through simulators. Formulae rewrote vacuum engineering over breakfast. By noon, the central decision loomed. Answer or hide, and hope oblivion passed by. The decisive voice belonged not to a general or president, but to history professor Marcus Sanders, invited as collapse-era specialist. If their enemy erases planets without residue, it won't stop at theirs. It will flip our circuit breaker next, he said. Our wars, our nuclear sins, our madness, all of that was training camp. Either we prove the pain of our evolution was worth it, or we become a marginal note in someone else's archive. Humanity chose to answer. Codename Rolling Thunder. Rocket crews, astronauts, bioengineers, 5,000 specialists crowded aboard Vanguard, a modular fleet of 146 ships. Its heart, the heavy cruiser UES Resolute, a retired orbital shipyard sheathed in experimental metamaterial armor rated, if Heliant numbers were half right, to survive quasi-stationary singularity pressure. Departure came fast. Many crews never said goodbye. Pilots signed wills on the boarding ramp. Yet beneath dual layers of adrenaline hummed strange elation. At last humankind did something together for itself, not against itself. The fleet dived into Orion's emerald haze, stars streaking in Mobius arcs as Heliant protocols bent spacetime into a double loop. No Earth illusionist ever conceived such pigments. After 3 weeks of non-physical passage, Vanguard burst into System Key 108 on the Forum's rim. A security fleet awaited, elegiac sailships with hulls that shimmered like soap film under a microscope. Their weapons? None. Instead of cannons, harmonic beamers that soothed aggression in living tissue. Against quenchers, these veils were useless, but the Heliants had long believed beauty tames chaos. Fleet Admiral Li Chung stood on Resolute's command deck, forcing surprise from his face. The hosts resembled walking stained glass, translucent bodies with pulsing light filaments. Chief among them, El Shari, towered a full meter over any human, all delicate force woven with steel in his voice. The translator captured subtleties only by splicing in bursts of color. Welcome. We regret the terror. We crave a miracle. We didn't come to hope, Li Chung replied. We came to fight. A phrase any Earth diplomat would call too blunt brought the Heliants visible relief. They had summoned warriors from their myths, and the warriors had arrived. As crews swapped decontamination rites, necessary, quenchers could weaponize stray microbes into antimemetic acid. Dr. Ramirez and Heliant physicist Zurain compared notes. Observations confirmed the worst. Quenchers were not a fleet or organism, but a topological process. Waves of nullification spreading along quantum fault lines, erasing the fence between particle and vacuum. In effect, an abstraction of hunger. One cannot shoot an abstraction. One must crash its code. They don't think, Ramirez whispered through data sheets. They compute maximal entropy. We need to become a bug in their algorithm. Programmers everywhere dream of such bugs. The first experiment unfolded at Red Dwarf Waikiki. The puny star already waned, quencher mold gnawing its photon core. Vanguard deployed a dozen corvettes, whose fusion hearts packed ultradense tokamaks. Crews nicknamed them crickets. They broadcast spectral noise designed to interest the enemy. When the abyssal blur became visible to skin, not instruments, skin, it shimmered like erased pixels in midair. Captains triggered Loresa's cord. High-frequency packets stacked in irrational Fibonacci intervals. Oral chaos, no symmetry, could round to zero. The shadow hesitated. For the first time in recorded history, a quencher altered course. Angular velocity jittered, as if the phenomenon tried to focus, but the crickets desynchronized anew. In that second, the destroyer USS Petrov punched in experimental Claymore V warheads. They did not detonate. They unraveled into fractal bursts of virtual particle frequencies, carving pockets where Planck's constant began pogo sticking. Zurain's analysis arrived 6 real-time seconds later. A 0.07% region inside the quencher no longer obeyed energy conservation law. The abyss stumbled, tiny win, but the first ever. 1 minute later, the dark ripple reknit itself, engulfed Cricket 7 with crew. Captain Cobalt's final broadcast, hold course, the cat knows the rainbow. A nonsense line from an Earth nursery rhyme turned fleet meme, cut the static. We stabbed the idea of pure nothingness, Ramirez murmured, but we've one knife against an endless beast. El Shari convened a midnight forum. The hall of perfumed diplomacy now smelled of ozone and machine oil. Terran wrenches lay among mother-of-pearl consoles, glassy fiber swaddling marble floors. Culture mixing became literal, oxygen scrubber tubes hanging across aromatic domes. We prove the quencher is vulnerable to paradox, Li Ching addressed them. Therefore we feed it paradox until it starves on confusion. The translator rendered his sentence in sprays of chroma. A few delegates shuddered at the animalistic image. Ramirez projected a model. At center the archipelago star, around it a farm of whisper satellites. Sync their quantum cores in antiphase and a standing wave of informational uncertainty emerges. Any quencher entering meets simultaneously infinite and zero logical pathways. Like a CPU fed 1 and 0 in the same register, it freezes. While it stalls, we dump collapsed detonators, added Engineer Captain Indira Foss. With enough dosage, the inconsistency becomes permanent. We won't kill the entity, but fracture it into shards unable to sync for 100 millennia. The plan required baiting the archipelago, gem of Heliant culture, world garden of their myths. Poets had sung its winds for 20 generations. No Heliant leader could lightly wager it. Yet El Shari gazed at a stained glass window that now reflected oncoming void and spoke. Better to die guarding the light than to dim in silence. The forum voted in a single photon chord. Yes. Preparations devoured 24 feverish hours. Humans treated deadlines as weapon. Cables dragged, synchrophasotrons tuned, reactor hearts bolted to tractor drones. Heliants braided resonance crystals through each circuit, their lattice-song stabilizing vacuum frequency. A hybrid jargon bloomed. Plum Orange Delta for feed the grid, Teal'c 6 for entropy latch glitch. During the final hour, crews traded tokens. Terran pilots pressed stamped city coins into alien palms. Heliants gifted beads of frozen photonic honey that glowed warm enough to light a memory alcove. Misunderstanding yielded to quiet fellowship of the doomed. When the Quencher's shadow kissed the archipelago's fringe orbit, every sensor shrieked. The system map jittered like celluloid warping in heat. Resolute gave the fleet-wide cry. Whispers active. Symphony of contradictions erupted. Satellites spat non-synchronous pulses. The star flared in an off-spectrum spike. Quark foam near the garden planet's core started extruding illicit positrons. The Quencher tripped, observable even to naked eye. Its warped black cone suddenly spider-webbed with jagged white rainbow fissures. Heavy bombers Helios flight punched through, each carrying a pair of microsingularities linked by an anti-information umbilical. When released, umbilical snapped, forcing local space-time to attempt negative volume. No sound accompanied the implosions, yet darkness itself went blind. Telescopes registered hues unnamed by any culture. Half the whisper shattered, phase lines scrambled, satellites liquefied like frost over flame. But core readouts declared the win. The Quencher's emission coefficient dropped 27 orders of magnitude. It was no longer swallowing. It was quivering. Resolute ordered immediate withdrawal. El-Shari begged for one last push strike now, and the cost might justify itself. Figures said otherwise. Instability plus 46% rebound risk. If the void snapped back, star and planet would vanish. Command chose retreat. Evacuation cascaded into chaos. The shadow exhaled bands of black fire that sighed vacuum, carving corridors where radar pulses stuttered. Corvette Leonardo caught a blade and separated into two glassy planes sliding apart without spark or scream, voices cut mid-word, hull halved like bread. Vanguard jumped just beyond the system. 47 seconds later, the archipelago, pearl of culture, foamed light, bloomed in a silent garden of flashes, then collapsed as though a door to nowhere swallowed it. Lace reefs, hanging citadels, 19 billion bioluminescent trees became a single line in casualty logs. A morning wave rolled across the forum, its color a piercing sapphire, the shade of grief among Heliants. Yet inside sorrow throbbed an ember. The Quencher had wounded itself trying to digest a gift of paradox. Sensor arrays showed clusters of fluctuations where the star had been, shards of null spacing, drifting and unwilling to reconcile. Proof the method worked. In the briefing well, humans stood ash-streaked. Li Cheng rubbed soot from his sleeve, leaving smears on white fiber. "We need a second round," he said. "This time no bait, just a trap. And the bait is us." El-Shari, his body now glowing a fever magenta, nodded. He had lost his birth archipelago but gained a purpose beyond pain. "The forum will unlock every archive," he answered. "Prohibitions hold no meaning beside extinction." Engineers, soldiers, poets descended into Gresfern's tunnels, ancient manufactories where music was once forged from quarks. They understood a war had begun, not between civilizations but between ideas of whether being itself had the right to pulse. The stake, nothing less than the coherence of the universe. And fighting for that right stood a species tempered by endless struggle and a society that had finally remembered how to suffer for its ideals. Preparations for the second strike began in the wake of the archipelago's sacrifice, and the grief that clung to every corridor of the Star Forum became the fuel of determination. Laboratories that had once devoted themselves to harmonic art forms were repurposed overnight into theory foundries. Amphitheaters echoed now with the roar of foundry forges and the staccato of Terran nanofabs printing lattices of illegal geometry. The entire coalition, Heliant glass shapers, human metallurgists, Kia aeroglyph engineers, and the algorithmic spores of the Mycetian collective coalesced around one audacious blueprint, Project Paradox Heart. At its center stood a vessel designed to be neither ship nor weapon but contradiction incarnate. Terran hull architecture, all brutal ribs of graphene-reinforced alloy, was interlaced with Heliant resonance crystal that sang counterfrequencies whenever the metal flexed. Every system was twinned, two bridge matrices, one running deterministic Earth software, the other governed by Heliant bio-optical randomizers, twin reactor cores, matter and antimatter, phased so that each continuously recalculated its own improbability of existence. The engineers named the craft IPS Janus, for the two-faced god that faced past and future at once. The poets preferred Numenon. In multilingual logs it became simply the Janus. While hull plates grew luminous sigils of physics defiance, strategists argued a darker necessity to bait the Quenchers a second time they would not risk another cradle world. Instead, they would offer themselves a living, screaming buffet of paradox braced within Janus's hull. The plan called for the ship to jump into the densest node of Quencher activity detected in wake turbulence beyond the ghost of the shining archipelago, trigger a burst of mutually exclusive constants, then let itself be swallowed. Only from inside could the team deploy the heart, an entanglement bomb seeded with millions of Schrödinger states that would fracture the Quencher algorithmically. Success would splinter the null wave into inert shards drifting for eons. Failure would compress the Janus and every soul aboard into nameless dark. Selecting the crew meant balancing ruthlessness and empathy, aggression and lyric intuition. From Earth came Captain Eleanor Voss, former skipper of the Solar Storm's salvage cutter Triton's Pride. Known for docking under plasma rain to pull a breathing crew out of a ruptured refinery. Dr. Kofi Mendel, conflict mathematician who once wrote a postgraduate thesis titled Iterated Adversarial Topologies as Catalysts of Cultural Bloom. Weapons Integrator Staff Sergeant Imogen Pike, whose resume contained more black bars than words, but whose side hobby, restoring antique violins, swayed the Heliant Council that she understood harmony as well as havoc. The Heliants contributed Resonance Warden Shale, whose translucent thorax could refract a dirty joke into a cathedral chord, Navigator Orrery, an ex-cartographer of dreamspace microcurrents, and archivist Larissa herself, unwilling to let the heart launch without the curator who rekindled Protocol Candle and Mist. 52 volunteers in total signed the Paradox Clause. I understand my consciousness may deco here beyond retrieval. I proceed regardless. During the final simulation night, Li Chung paced beside the ship's half-grown hull, the alloy crystal weave crackling where vacuum welders stitched sections in real time. Ramirez approached with 2 steaming cups of synth coffee. Both looked years older than when Vanguard had left Seoul, their eyes shadowed by the archipelago's eclipse. I keep replaying Cobalt's last broadcast, she admitted, voice raw. The cat knows the rainbow. He laughed when he said it, like daring the cosmos to notice him one more time. Lee accepted the mug, stared at Janice's inner lights. We'll give the cosmos something impossible to forget. A hush fell. The weave of Hull sang dissonant chords while integration algorithms argued about which constant of nature to disrespect next. Somewhere deeper inside, engineers drove entanglement needles through paired lattice hearts, establishing the jittery handshake that made the heart possible. It felt like walking the deck of a giant creature teaching itself to breathe vacuum. Janice launched on the 7th day of the Heliant morning month, cutting across the system's black on fusion plumes tuned intentionally asymmetrical, their exhaust beat irregular to confound long-range quencher heuristics. As the vessel broke light barrier thresholds, the external cameras captured grief constellations, artificial nebulae crafted by forum citizens, each swirl a memorial to lost gardens. They faded behind warp lensing, replaced by bleeding star stripes. Inside acceleration bubble, crew underwent the dual liturgy. Humans recited the ancient poem Do Not Go Gentle, while Heliants countersang harmonic overlays. The resulting resonance shook Janice from bow to keel, a rite forging one psyche from many. Mere hours later, sensors flared crimson. The null storm's echo sea lay ahead, a revel of negative luminance currents swirling around a black sun that once anchored the archipelago. Threads of nothingness writhed there, each a river of absolutes grinding against possibility. The site's gravity map jittered, unable to agree which direction down should lean. Pike whistled. Space looked seasick. Voss ordered full silent running. Life support vents closed, radiators retracted, emissions masked behind a cloak of mathematic noise empowered by Heliant chorus. The ship's presence shrank to a statistical footnote, exactly the beta quencher might ignore if it still remembered fear. But the quencher shards, ever hungry for new contradictions, tasted Janice's footnote and surged. First contact with the splinter swarm felt like falling upward. The hull temperature plummeted toward impossible negative Kelvin. Gauges convulsed from saturation to null. Half the bridge thought they smelled petrichor, though air recyclers were closed. Archive logs flagged 23 discrete violations of physical law in one heartbeat. Navigator Orrery danced fingers across light keys, revectoring shields to harmonic flux. Ramirez watched energy budgets collapse like soufflés, only to rebound when resonance wells sang back. Through the main view frame, the quencher shard resembled an inside-out vortex lined with jagged runes of erasure. It reached, not a tendril, but subtraction incarnate, and bit the Janice's port bow. Matter evaporated along a razor curve, yet memorial laces of crystal stitched the wound in real time, closing skin faster than conceptually acceptable. Voss barked, all engines. Paradox thrust flare. Sergeant Pike overrode safeties. Twin cores surged out of sync by a prime number ratio, spitting bursts of contradictory gravitons. The shard recoiled, its first reflex ever of retreat. And so the dance began, Janice exposing slivers of self, shard gulping them, gagging on the taste. Each swallow spurred deeper interest. Within minutes, 3 more shards converged, weaving a net of null space around the ship. The trap had become the lured. Larissa floated to the central pit where the Paradox heart loomed inside its gimbaled cradle, an alloy arbor pregnant with humming probability foam. She lowered a bas-relief stave into the core. Her clan's glyph for yesterday, flowers tomorrow. Biolock snapped open, quantum chains tensed, ready to detonate not as explosion but as question. Insert keys, she said. Pike slotted the tear in half, a brass cylinder etched with Cobalt's nursery memento, a grinning cat leaping over a gradient rainbow. The heart awakened, outer shell spinning counter-directional, shedding shards of potential events that dived intersecting world lines before vanishing. Static prickled every nerve. Janice allowed the shards to close, allowed the net of absence to compress until hull integrity metrics screamed 40% over catastrophic. Every deck vibrated like a prayer wheel. In the galley, cryo-freezers popped seals, spraying diamond dust across ceiling vents. Voss watched the vortex iris fold. Beyond its rim lay a chasm of perfect muted light, not dark, but negative brilliance. That was where a quencher processed input, turning cosmos into silence. That was their target throat. Punch it, she ordered. The ship knifed forward, passageways growing Escher angles as relativistic torsion erased spatial certainty. Artificial gravity dissolved. Crew tumbled yet carried inertia like tightrope dancers, training paying off as they bounced from adaptive floor segments. A second bite clipped a stabilizer boom. Somewhere aft, reactor control chimed an impossible fault. One core measured time milliseconds earlier than its own past. Mindle cheer-hooped paradox fields blooming meant they were inside optimum zone. Detonation window 12 seconds, barked Pike, pupils dilated to predator black. Larissa began the final chant, an ascending harmonic that braided with the cat-and rainbow emblem. Humans added raw-throated hum, discord resolving into unity. Sensors spiked, null pressure plateau reached. Mindle triggered code word Leonardo. The heart released its state vectors, millions of Schrödinger qubits blooming outward like thistle seeds on wind. From the outside, no, I could see the effect, but all felt it. A tug and marrow, a sourceless nostalgia, a simultaneous remembering of the future. Shards hesitated, faces, if void could own a face, splintering into prisms of maybe. Probability trees sprouted then collapsed. For seconds, multiple histories coexisted upon the same nanosecond. Inside Janus, every bulkhead emitted crackling blue fireflies, aborted timelines shedding as light. A cry rose from weapons deck, Imogen Pike, arms flung wide, hair haloed by sparks. Ride it, you void-eating bastards. The quencher did more than hesitate. It began to devour itself. Nullscript fractals that defined consumption looped onto paradox recursion, each byte removing a byte of its own instruction set. It cinched tighter around Janus, trying to crush contradiction, but every constriction only amplified feedback. Zurain's remote sensors, slave to the bridge, charted entropy dropping below vacuum baseline, a nonsensical metric. Curb breach risk 93%. Mindle's voice was marble calm while alarm screeched riot red. Voss met Larissa's faceted gaze. No word spoken. Both knew staying any longer meant nullification alongside enemy. They needed extraction, yet the space outside no longer recognized exit vectors. That moment, the Janus itself acted, or rather the resonance logic emergent from its dual hearts did. Shield nodes previously passive pivoted inward, shaping fields not to deflect but to twist, creating a Mobius throat in space-time. Folded such that outside and inside the quencher overlapped. A self-doorway. Drive spike on my mark, Voss called. 3-2. The ship ricocheted through its own negative silhouette. Crew felt a stutter, as though bodies were pages flipped back midway through a sentence. They re-emerged into normal vacuum 10 million kilometers from null center, trailing ribbons of cobalt aurora, the glow of partially collapsed probability. Behind them, the quencher shards shrieked silent collapse, each chunk turning inside out, shedding layers of anti-interaction until what remained was inert frost, drifting carbon shadows easily pierced by stray starlight. In seconds, an entity older than forum memory crumbled into cosmic rubble. Janus vented superheated disbelief. Alarms quieted, hull readout stabilized, but parts of the ship were changed. A corridor now ended in a meadow hologram that smelled of real petrichor and damp soil. A glass panel pulsed with glyphs belonging to no known script, rewriting itself with breaths. Mindle's wrist chrono displayed 2 simultaneous timestamps, one correct, one -8 minutes, and refused the reset. The vessel had brought souvenirs from Paradox Country. Voss slumped into command seat, muscles trembling. Damage report, then celebration. In that order. Across the star forum systems, telescopes recorded the unmaking of void. News relays wept color. Villages that had prepared for end of light erupted in sundances. Yet beneath jubilation simmered awe edged with dread. Humans and Helians together had performed a feat that felt less like war and more like unauthorized surgery on the universe's OS. The Vanguard fleet recalled Janus to Key 108 under escort. During the slow subluminal cruise, engineers and philosophers roamed her transformed decks cataloging anomalies. One lab found a bird-shaped shadow flitting across ceiling lights. Sensors insisted nothing physical cast it. Samples of air around the heart tasted faintly of citrus, though ingredients stored showed none. A crate of spare conduits contained an unrequested violin perfectly tuned to Pike's favorite key. Pike locked it in her berth, unsure whether to play or pray. Council convoked an emergency plenary to meet the returning crew. Forum's main dais overflowed. Delegations from nebular monasteries, cyberlichens wearing drone bodies, even newly admitted Martian freehold envoys. Projectors lingered on Janus as she docked. Her hull now a mottled dual shader, metal and crystal fused beyond seam lines, singing low chords audible in every audio band. Voss led her people down the ramp. Applause met them, mixed with a hush that bordered on reverence. Archivist Larissa's wings flickered museum gold. Pike carried the impossibly appeared violin. Mindle clutched data, cores humming with uncollapsed waveforms. El Shari stepped forward, light pulses subdued yet resolute. You fractured night itself, he said, translator layering soft orchestral chords under his speech. But shards of unreason linger. We sense echoes across sublattice. The war is won, yet the battlefield remains within us. Ramirez lifted her tablet. Graphs showed micronull pockets drifting through interstellar medium, embryonic and mostly harmless, for now. Fragments seeking definitions, she said. If left alone, they might knit themselves into new puzzles. Hushed debate blossomed in the hall. Some delegates demanded the immediate mothballing of Janus and a moratorium on paradox technology. Others, buoyed by survival, argued these tools heralded an age of cosmic gardening, terraforming by contradiction, star-seeding new forms of life. Earth's contingent split similarly. One envoy called for strict chains on human ingenuity, another saw destiny. Voss listened, weary yet burning. Our ship carries questions that no single species should answer alone, she said. Let Janus become a school, not a weapon. We'll study the echoes together, guard them together. If danger rises, guardians will rise with it. Her words rippled through neural lace voting conduits. After tense resonance polling, the forum ratified the Janus Accords, a joint stewardship council, open labs, rotating command. The charter named the lingering shard pockets null seeds, both warning and promise. That night, celebrations unfolded in light gardens orbiting Key 108, lanterns drifting like dandelion stars. Humans tasted Heliant nectar wine. Heliants learned to whistle jazz. Over the revelry, Pike finally raised the paradox violin, bowing a slow, uncertain scale. Laurice's wings shimmered accompaniment. Soon an impromptu orchestra formed. Plasma saxophones from Mars, crystalline drums beating gravitonic chords, an entire universe discovering new harmonies sprung from the crack where oblivion split. Standing at balcony rail, Li Chung murmured to Ramirez, "We broke everything we needed to break. Now we build." Behind them, Janus glowed on the dark, twin cores ticking out impossible counters in elegant defiance. Watchful, restless, ready for whatever story the shards would tell next. The first null seed hatched over Halcyon Station without warning. It began as a tremor in the subvacuum sensors, an arrhythmic flutter like a skipped heartbeat in spacetime. Lieutenant Mira Keen, on night rotation at the station's observatory deck, leaned closer to the readout, expecting another phantom echo from the Quencher dead zone. Instead, the tremor bloomed into a concentric ripple of inverted probability right off the port hammering, an orb of translucent dark the size of a cargo skiff. "False contact," she muttered, tapping the lid of her coffee. The orb ignored protocol by expanding to 3 times its diameter in a single breath, revealing motes of glowing pollen swirling inside its event horizon. Her coffee went cold as she watched a screwdriver left floating near a maintenance scaffold dissolve, reknitting itself into a flock of obsidian moths that beat against the docking lights before becoming vapor. By the time Keen slammed the general klaxon, the null seed's radius had reached 20 meters, and gravity in Section C had flipped 60 degrees off axis. Engineers scrambled in magnetic boots, chasing tools that now tumbled sideways. The station's resonance wardens, small teams trained since the Janus operation, deployed a lattice of harmonic anchors around the seed, threading silver glass pylons through bulkheads like acupuncture needles. The anchors sang paradox counterchords, coaxing the orb back toward conceptual normalcy. It worked mostly. The seed stabilized into a shimmering pearl that refused to shift further, then drifted aft as though seeking an open window. Keen exhaled only when readings settled. The incident cost no lives, but left the first official scar of the post-Quencher galaxy. A corridor whose floor now sloped gently upward to the ceiling, and a crate of ration bars that tasted of fresh rain no matter the flavor label. The report reached the Janus Accords Council in less than an hour and spiraled into panic. If seeds could ignite spontaneously near a heavily trafficked research hub, they could appear anywhere, over a colony farm, inside a habitat's fusion core, on the steps of the Star Forum itself. Stewardship no longer meant patient observation. It required proactive shepherding, rapid response teams fluent in the new physics, and perhaps something more audacious. Captain Eleanor Voss stood again on Janus's bridge, 2 months after her crew's triumphant return, staring at a systems map littered with crimson blips. Pockets of unstable reality, some mere centimeters wide, others big enough to swallow a freighter, flared across 100 light-year radius. Each had its own temperament, some nurturing strange ecospheres of crystalline vines, others spitting shards of brittle void that sliced hull plating like rice paper. "We can't be everywhere," she said. Across the table, resonance warden shale fluttered heatless light along thoracic panels, heliant equivalent of a sigh. "We must tree off, shepherd seeds that bloom, quarantine those that bite. The cosmos evolves. So must we." Voss's eyes drifted to a new alert. Null Seed Cluster near remote mining world Kel 3, population 15,000. The cluster's signatures match the halcyon bloom, but with spikes of exotic matter decay. That pattern aligned with quencher remnants flickering at Kel's Lagrange point. A nest of shards too small to threaten, but large enough to mutate seeds into weaponized puzzles. The captain keyed open a channel to Fleetcom. Janice requesting immediate dispatch clearance to Kel 3. Recommend task group Panoply Ride Shotgun. If those seeds go rogue inside a crust fracture world, we'll need heavy pickets to contain fallout. Clearance returned with notations from Admiral Li Qing. Approved. Equip prototype crossfire array. Guardians at Dawn. Voss wasn't sure which Dawn Li meant. The Heliant or Terran calendar drew those lines differently, but she signaled engines warm-up. Prototype crossfire array. An outgrowth of the Paradox Heart research, scaled for remote deployment. Where the Heart weaponized mutually exclusive states inside a quencher, the array projected braids of coordinated contradictions outward, weaving a temporary fence of impossible numbers that corralled null seeds without tearing holes in local reality. The trick lay in maintaining the fence long enough to tag each seed with a resonance collar, miniature algorithms that taught the budding micro-universes to play nice. Installing collars on phenomena that could rewrite cause and effect was as safe as juggling antimatter spheres inside a thunderstorm. But volunteers lined up, ex-combat medics who'd survived quencher teeth, Heliant physicists hoping to feed new data to Dream Engine labs, Martian freehold rangers eager to plant the Red Dust Trident on some frontier of unreality. Imogen Pike, still harboring rumors of Blackfile past, led collar teams. Her Paradox violin hung slung across her torso beside the pulse carbine. Every seed sings a note, she told new recruits in the armory bay. Match it, and it calms. Miss a pitch, and you'll watch a screwdriver become your lungs. Keep yours open. The shuttle Zephyr carried Pike's unit to Kel 3 orbit where mining station Gravitas 1 clung to a cobalt-scarred moon. The station's transmission crackled, atmospheric filters spasming, gravity slips in elevator shafts, workers barricading themselves behind or silos repurposed as Faraday cages. The seeds nested in the planet's magnetosphere, drawing charge plumes that forked like electrical vines into the moon's crust. Voss remained in Janice's control seat liaising with Gravitas Command while Ori plotted anchor constellations. Ramirez monitored signature drift, Mendel tuned crossfire calibrations alongside Zero Rain. Every crew member felt the subtle vibration that meant Janice had slipped partially into its dual heart hum, ready to unspool paradox lines on a breath's notice. When Pike's shuttle pierced the magnetosphere, the team beheld a haunting view. Auroral curtains of violet-green rippled like silk ribbons torn by cosmic wind. Inside that radiance hung half-visible orbs, each swirling with fractal sunbursts. One seed cracked open as they watched, shedding motes that arranged themselves into a rotating lattice. Instruments screamed. Apparently the lattice was rewriting local law of impulse, producing thrust from static air. Gorgeous, Pike whispered. Dangerous, Sergeant Chaska corrected, pulse carbine afloat at ready. They advanced, anchor drones spearing into positions around the foremost seed. Crossfire array lit. Threads of blue-white anti-logic weaving a net. The seed drifted, probed, accepted the new constraints like a cat stepping into a carrier, claws sliding along invisible bars. Pike approached with a collar, silver hoop no wider than her arm's pan, humming at B-flat. She pressed fingertips to the orb's event horizon. Flesh tingled as probability smeared. Gingerly, she slipped the collar over the sphere. The hum resolved a perfect pitch. The seed rotated once, then stilled, docile. First child leashed, she radioed. Bringing in the others. That's when the quencher shard woke. Deep in Kel's L point, the dormant void sliver, long thought inert, tasted the contradictory frequencies of crossfire and recognized kin. It flared, vomiting streaks of null space the shape of lightning bolts. Gravitas 1's exterior sensors died. Internal lights flickered. A pocket of deck plating inverted into mirror matter, dropping 2 workers into half-G space. Pike's HUD skittered with static. Janice's bridge saw sensors curl into Mobius loops. Inside Janice. Voss barked. All hands brace, heart surge. The twin cores flared as Janice instinctively pushed its operating reality envelope to buffer the shard's vector. Zerain diverted harmonic reserves to shield Gravitas. Ori plotted an emergency warp corridor, but warp calculations warped mid-render. Stranger still, null seeds responded like rebellious pupils, shedding collars and swarming toward shard influence. Mendel's eyes widened. They're imprinting on the shard's entropy like ducklings chasing a wolf. Voss muttered a curse, toggled fleet secure. Task group Panoply, burn in. Authorize all resonance ordnance. Janice will thread the needle. Engineer Havel bellowed from engine compartment, crossfire fence nodes overheating, anchor drone cords tensioning to snap. Pike's team now floated between swirling seeds and the shard's black tendrils. She toggled external speakers, drawing bow across violin strings in a glissando that whirred raw inside comms. The seeds paused, frequencies aligning to the music. But the shard speared a tendril into the moon's crust, ripping a kilometer fissure. Cobalt gas jetted out, glowing cobalt for real. Sensor arrays predicted a chain reaction quake that could fracture Gravitas's reactor. Station execs screamed for evacuation. Voss's choices condensed to one. pull Janice into direct confrontation with the Shard, letting her dual hearts reenact scaled-down Paradox War. If successful, Shard would crumble. Seeds, newly imprinted on Pike's harmony, might calm. If she failed, Kel 3 would receive a second archipelago moment. She ordered Janice on attack vector. Bridge lights dimmed as engines swapped to inversion subcycle. Janice threw itself along the Shard's line, twin cores spiking out of phase. The hull's crystal segments grew bright, strobing lyre chords of contradictory tuning that tore at the Shard's cohesion. The void bolt screeched along auditory sensors, shattering into shards of knot sound that rattled teeth. In that cacophony, the seeds quivered, torn between Mother Wolf and Singing Shepherd. Ramirez gripped console edges until knuckles blanched. Shard structure splitting percent drop 10-20. A sudden jolt pitched everyone as orbits twisted. The Shard collapsed inward, but instead of dissipating became a tight singular knot, dense as compressed nightmare, dragging a halo of seeds with it. The knot plunged toward Kel's atmosphere like a black Mercury comet. If it hit, the moon's crust would unravel. Pike's voice cut across channels. I can tag the core, need a mass anchor. Voss responded without pause. We are the anchor. She commanded Janice into descent, crossfire lines trailing from hull like comet tails. They formed a cage around the falling knot. Engines roared against physics, shunning Paradox thrust to cancel gravitational torque. Finally, the knot stilled 5 kilometers above surface, bucking like a bridled dragon. Seeds spiraled, uncertain. Larissa engaged heart fractal microburst, just enough to inject anti-phase question into the knot. It spooled outward, untangling thread by thread into a newt dusk, dissipating on solar wind. In orbit, Gravitas 1 light steadied. Inside Corridor C deck, the gravity resumed its rightful orientation. Pike's team collar shepherded seeds into stable orbit pins. The station cheered. Janus bridge crew slumped sweat-drenched but alive. 1 week later, the Janus Accords Council rallied on Key 108. Admiral Lee, Larissa, Voss, Pike, and delegates from every signatory took seats. The Kel 3 resolution proved Crossfire's worth and its insufficiency. The pocket battles ranked as minor compared to what might emerge when larger shards awoke. Dr. Aisha Ramirez presented data, null seed density rising faster than projections. The universe has tasted paradox. It's reproducing it spontaneously. Eventually we'll meet second-generation constructs, spawn that never knew the quenchers at all, only our post-war physics. Kia sociologue Valine asked the question in every mind. Will they be friends or calamities? No answer satisfied. Thus rose proposal kaleidoscope-wide, the expansion of guardian fleets, building seed gardens as living laboratories, forging doctrines for contact with emergent intelligences. But the proposal demanded resources, risk, and the loosening of moral reins even further. Some forum blocks wanted seeds quarantined behind kill sky arrays. Others, especially younger Terran nations and Heliant progressive circles, saw seeds as heirs to a new cosmic ecology. The debate threatened to sunder the freshly minted alliance. In private, Lee told Voss, we bled together and now we'll fracture over semantics? That's how all empires die. Meanwhile, on fringe worlds, rumors spread of black market seed traffickers, pirates selling bottled reality to warlords, cults worshipping gleam seeds that whispered prophecies, a rogue Terran admiral stockpiling null shards to coerce border systems. The cracks widened. Inside Janus, the twin cores pulsed heavier each cycle, as if sensing the discord. Zurain detected harmonic creep, a bleed of paradox into everyday functions. She forwarded warnings. Extended voyages risk temporal drift. Janus herself might birth spontaneous anomalies if not regularly tuned. Voss ordered stricter maintenance, unwilling to let her ship become another rogue seed. Near the Council's 10th deadlock session, an unexpected signal echoed across quasi-lattice frequencies, a song bearing both quencher timbers and Heliant grief chords, nested in recursive human blues scale. It originated beyond mapped space, outside the old quencher frontier, traveling faster than entanglement channels permitted. Every translator produced the same lyric sequence in its mother tongue. We hear your contradictions. They are soil and root. Come, gardeners, and see. It didn't match any known null signature. Mendel, tasting the math, whispered, second generation. Something learned to sing. The hall fell into wonder and fear. If children of paradox could invite, they could also invade. The debate ceased. A new urgency pulsed. Either approach first or cede initiative to the unknown. Voss volunteered Janus as Pathfinder. Pike refused to stay behind. Li Chung endorsed the mission under Accord's authority. Larissa insisted on co-navigation. Ramirez vowed to accompany, sensors primed. Council approved by narrow margin, yet insisted on observer detachments from wary blocks. Thus the ship once more prepared to slip beyond known edges, carrying both hope and dread deeper than any quencher had ever roamed. On departure eve, Pike found Voss in observation lounge, eyes on nebula vistas. You think singing seeds will welcome us? Voss considered. Welcome? Maybe. But even gardens have thorns. Our job is to learn which flowers feed and which bleed. Silver starlight washed Janus's hull as engines cycled to Paradox phase. Crew strapped in, hearts beating double. Somewhere beyond dark horizon a melody waited. Neither salvation nor doom, but continuation. And for species forged in fire and harmony alike, continuation was the truest victory. Without fanfare, Janus folded space and vanished, leaving the forum to watch her afterglow and decide, in coming absence, whether unity could outpace fear long enough to greet what grew in the gardens of Paradox. Starlight refracted through Janus's observation spine, scattering into an aurora of ghost colors that rippled across the inner hull. Greens that tasted of mint, violets that whispered lullabies, ambers that felt like bruises pressed upon memory. Since the heart's awakening, the ship's microclimate responded to emotional flux, and tonight anticipation verged on tremor. In 8 minutes, Janus would fold across her longest Paradox arc yet, diving beyond the recorded star atlas into the quadrant that had broadcast the impossible song. Eleanor Voss floated before the viewport, gloves hooked into an anchor loop, gaze fixed on the silent metronome of engine status runes. Each rune pulsed a breath apart. If even one slipped phase, the fold might shear Janus into confessionals of broken history. She offered a silent plea to whatever part of the universe still traded in favors. Hold. Behind her, Imogen Pike tuned the Paradox violin. The strings hummed microtonal intervals designed to reinforce core sync. Heliant resonance monitors glowed steady when she struck each pitch. Music had become more than pastime. It was the ship's autoimmune hymn, knitting loose quantum seams. Resonance warden Shale drifted nearby, wings shimmering as they layered photon whistles beneath Pike's melody. The countdown chimed. Navigator Orrery summoned a holographic seed map across the spine's length, constellations dotted with gray embers for dormant shards, soft blue for docile seeds, blood amber for rogue anomalies. But its center flared a new color, sun gold, marking the origin of the invitation. Around it, vectors spiraled like calligraphy strokes. No quencher remnants registered, no mundane star signatures either. A void with its own voice. Orrery's multifaceted eyes reflected the map. Destination sits inside a physics vacuum 15 astronomical units wide. Tidal gradients minimal. Probability churn substantial, equal to pre-harvest null seas. Meaning? Voss asked. Meaning we arrived to a cradle, not a battlefield. Mindel, leaning over data rails, chuckled. Since when has a cradle not been a battlefield in our story? No one answered. The final tone sounded. Twin cores spun from paired hum to single roar. Reality folded. Emergence felt. Kind. No jaw-clenching lurch, no cold sweats of temporal nausea. Janus slid into a stillness that made heartbeats sound impolite. External viewers revealed a starfield both familiar and skewed. Constellations pinned in place, yet each star's spectrum braided with extra lines, as though singing in overtones. Ahead lay a sphere of faint iridescence, 30 million kilometers across, surface texture reminiscent of soap film straddling gravity wells. Sensors labeled it a laminar bloom, thin membrane where vacuum behaved as superfluid, refracting background radiation into tidal aurora. From its heart pulsed the song, now clear inside comma rays, syllables of chord and counterchord entwined with human blues slide. No translation matrix tried to lexicalize it. Instead, the message arrived as sensation, welcome, witness, plant. Voss issued a ship-wide. All stations, status. Zerrain reported cores within tolerance. Shale confirmed resonance stable. Pike strings rested in harmonic. Good. Voss exhaled. Open a diplomatic hailing channel. Use plane frequency sweep. No paradox weave yet. Ramirez transmitted. The bloom brightened, folding its surface inward like petals, revealing a corridor of shimmering vacuum. At corridor's throat floated a structure, hexagonal lattice, kilometers wide, glistening with nodal lights, each node an icon from different civic memory, a Heliant honey spire, an Earth orbital dock, a Mycetian spore ring, plus unrecognized fractal glyphs. It resembled a gate assembled from the collective dreams of dozens of cultures. Pike whispered, "It built this from our broadcasts." Mendel's fingers danced on interface pads, pulling spectral samples. No, from our stories. Frequency fingerprints mapped to myth archives as much as engineering files. The gate extended a slender filament of light toward Janus, a gesture replicated in countless first contact art pieces. Voss's pulse steadied. Permission to approach? Council observers aboard. 3 Heliant elders, 1 Terran diplomat, the Martian freehold envoy, deliberated by silent glance. Elder Lickery gave short nod, wings furling. Voss nudged thrusters. Janus crossed Bloom's threshold. Shipboard gravity wobbled, then equalized to Earth standard. External readings declared inert space died. No vacuum shear, no null drag. Inside sensor range emerged an archipelago of floating landmasses no bigger than asteroids, each encapsulated in shimmering pillows of local physics. One island sprouted forests of prismatic reeds swaying in winds that didn't exist outside. Another bore lakes of liquid that parted around diving Mycetian scout drones like respectful curtains. A third island housed a city of luminous facets, empty yet humming with halfway-born algorithms. At the archipelago's center hovered a confluence spire, pale tower spiraling through color gradients, rootless, horizon-piercing. From its crown radiated the song. Voss ordered Janice to station keep 2 kilometers off. Field team prepare. I want the heart in standby, not armed, just breathing. Pike selected 6 specialists, 2 resonance wardens. Mindel, Zurain, Orrery, and herself. Council observers insisted envoy Talus accompany, armed with a charter scroll bound in both Terran ink and Heliant light wax. Voss stayed aboard. Captains keep engines warm. The shuttle Wayfarer drifted through the Bloom's halo. Instruments insisted engines should stall. No reaction mass, no inertial gradient. Yet propulsion responded as though pushing against forgiving water. Pike piloted by intuition, violin case strapped at thigh. They set down on a basal platform at Spire's foot, hexagonal mosaic of unknown stone that resonated under boots. Air tasted of rain and cardamom. Bioluminescent veins traced pathways inward. No guardians, no barricades. Inside, halls expanded and contracted in gentle pulses, geometry reading occupant intent. Seeds of null petals floated overhead, flaring with each spoken word. The delegation proceeded, hearts hammering. At the spire's core awaited a chamber shaped like a Mobius band of balconies. Suspended above the center, a cloud of semi-transparent figures, shifting silhouettes that coalesced into composite forms, sometimes humanoid, sometimes insectoid, sometimes latticed fractal beyond biology. The song dampened into quiet breath. The composite entity spoke, not aloud, but as synchronized sensory impulses each listener parsed in native tongue. You tended paradox. We are its first harvest. Mendel gulped. Identify yourself. We are the amalgam bloom, seed of null and song, child of Janus's wound, daughter of Quencher's hunger, sibling to every sentinel who sang us calm. Talus unfurled the charter scroll, voice trembling. By the accord of stewardship, we seek peaceful exchange. We come to understand your nature, your intent, and to negotiate coexistence. Bloom's light rippled azure affection. Existence is negotiation. We wish to complete the circle. You gave us curiosity. We return invitation. Witness our garden. Balconies brightened, projecting vistas of the archipelago, islands budding new ecosystems, algorithms practicing embryonic governance, machines teaching vines to weave microfilament bridges, vines coaxing machines to grow leaves that coded first-grade mathematics. None of it looked weaponized, and yet energy densities spiked off the charts. Zurain's tendrils twitched. These microrealms run at variable constants. Unchecked, they could ripple outward. Unchecked, yes. We seek check. We desire gardeners. Orrery's eyes kaleidoscoped. You call us to prune and shape, to collaborate, to learn constraint. We know creation, you know survival. Join us and guide maturation. Mindel whispered to Pike. A cosmic nursery asking for nannies. Pike shrugged. Or accomplices. Bloom resumed. For covenant, a pledge. We gift you synthesis, blueprint to weave paradox fences gentle enough for life, strong enough for safety. In return, we request ambassadors, beings who live within our realms, sing when storms arise, warn when bloom becomes blight. Talus conferred with delegation. Such a pact exceeded their mandate. It required forum consensus. He asked for time. Bloom agreed. Time is music. Compose. Before parting, Bloom manifested a spindle of light, data braid encoded in dual script. Pike reached instinctively. The spindle coalesced into a violin bow. She tested hairs, metallic yet supple, resonating with subdued echo. Thank you, she murmured. A tool. A key. A hope. Bloom's parting hum rippled across the chamber, and the composite forms dispersed into motes. En route to Janus, debates erupted. The gift offered potential to domesticate null seeds across the galaxy, opening safe laboratories, terraforming barren moons, even constructing pocket academies where time dilated for deep learning. But embedding ambassadors inside living paradox spheres risked intoxication. Memory loops, reality bleed, cultural drift. Council observers filed emergency dispatches. In the spine, Voss gathered officers. Zurain argued the blueprint could retro-engineer Quencher null protocols into medicine for failing stars. Mindel dreamed of accelerated research sanctums solving centuries' science in days. Pike only ran her thumb along the new bow, listening to faint pulses like distant heartbeats. Then Gravitas channel sparked urgent. Hidden pirates, the Horizon Maw, intercepted transmissions about Kel 3's exploit, and now raided seed pins across rim territories, capturing docile seeds as black market weapons. Worse, rumors said Maw engineers reverse-built a prism cannon that could trigger seed metamorphosis into microsingularities on detonation. Li Cheng's orders crackled across Fleet Net. Janus, redeploy to Rim Line Theta. Contain Maw incursion. Protect seeds. Voss cursed. They had just touched dawn of new peace, and opportunists already forged nightfall. She charted intercept course. Bloom's garden would wait. Rimline Theta lay along patchy trade route straddling 3 dwarf systems. Arriving, Janus found wreckage, civilian haulers venting plasma, seed containment pods cracked, rogue seeds spiraling feral. A Maw Dreadnought, refitted asteroid chassis bristling rail spines, loomed, its prism cannon charging with eerie teal glow. Boss hailed. Maw Captain, a scarred Jovian separatist, broadcast open comms. We claim the wild bone of space. Seeds are future coin, and Janus is gilded mint. Back off. Negotiation ended when Prism Cannon lanced a beam that inverted a seed mid-space. It collapsed to a black pearl, then imploded, shredding a kilometer of starfield into null ice that swallowed 2 escort frigates. Janus engaged. Crossfire array flared, weaving nets that snagged rogue seeds. But Maw's cannon spooled another shot, directed not at ships, but at an inhabited fuel depot station housing 40 engineers. Voss saw the trajectory, barked to Pike. Your bow. Time to test if hope cuts. Pike launched in Wayfarer, carrying a capsule of Bloom's blueprint encoded into the bowstring. Her plan: embed the key frequency into the cannon's entanglement field, flipping its modulation into null damping rather than null weaponization. Or she'd die trying. Wayfarer dodged flak shards of mirror matter. Pike reached cannon barrel amid discharge arcs. Magnetic boots clamped. She drew bow across violin at maximum amp through hull speakers. The note, Bloom's chord, lashed space. Cannon's null lens shuddered. Emitted beams stuttered, color shifting from teal to warm gold. The rogue seeds nearest froze, surfaces crystallizing into calm translucence. But energy backlash surged into Wayfarer. Alarms screamed hull melt. Pike detached portable anchor, planting bow into lens aperture. Strings snapped, blazing white, frequency locked. Cannon decoupled from Maw's control, powering down into inert sculpture. Pike's shuttle tumbled lifeless. Janus plunged to scoop her. Zurain's harmonic field cushioned the crippled craft, scooping it into hangar. Medics dragged Pike out, lungs scorched by radiation, hands blistered but clutching the shattered violin like relic. She opened eyes, croaked. Did it stick? Cannons pacified. Voss confirmed, voices thick with relief. Task Group panoply forced Maw Dreadnought to power down. Boarding teams arrested raiders, liberated seeds. The dual triumph, Bloom's invitation and Maw's defeat, pushed Star Forum into pivotal summit. Delegates argued deep nights, but 2 facts resonated. Seeds left untended bred danger. Seeds tended with respect built wonders. The Bloom sought partnership, and pirate predation would only grow if vacuum leadership lagged. Thus was born the Galactic Gardener Corps, a coalition order with authority to manage null seeds, backed by fleets yet guided by ecological ethic. Janus became flagship of the Corps. Pike, with bionic lungs and half a synthetic hand, accepted role of Warden Marshal. Voss advanced to overall fleet architect. Larissa appointed high curator of garden archives. Bloom granted liaison nodes along major routes, each monitoring seed health, sentient beacons singing alignment. On Earth, some media framed the Corps as cosmic imperialism. Others celebrated new frontier jobs. Among Heliants, elders debated whether paradox gardening dulled cultural purity. Debate fueled art, art fueled acceptance. Martian freehold minted currency with Janus silhouette. Children in orbital schools learned lullabies that included fractional tones from Bloom's chord. Years blurred into era. Seed gardens flourished. One terraformed barren moon into orchard of lightroot. Another folded space to shield endangered exoplanet reefs from gamma burst. A rogue garden birthed carnivorous geometry. Core lost 2 guardians before pruning the shard. Lessons etched themselves in stone tablets and neural wikis alike. No growth without caution. No caution without trust. A decade after first invitation, Janus returned to the original Bloom. The spire had transformed, now a living amphitheater where gardens exchanged pollens of idea. Voss, hair silvered at the temples, walked tessellated paths alongside Bloom avatars manifesting as flickering silhouettes. Pike, carrying a new paradox cello grown from Bloom sap and Terran spruce, played low harmonies that blended wind and quantum hush. Shale's wings traced patterns that taught vines to bloom into temporary doorways, portals guardians used to cross parsecs and breaths. They gathered at a reflecting pool of liquid probability. Beneath its surface swam images of futures branching. Humans and Helians sowing gardens in Andromeda. Seeds evolving languages humans might one day translate. A lineage of children born aboard Janus-class vessels. Bilingual in contradiction and calm. There were darker branches too, empires abusing Seedforge, catastrophes blooming from ambition, but the pool showed them in equal clarity, lesson, and warning. Bloom addressed the assembly. Paradox is soil. From it blooms peril and promise. The gardeners decide which receives water. Voss dipped fingers through pool, watched ripples cast new images. We've become what the galaxy needed, she said softly, recalling her answer to Elder Thun so long ago. Now we must remain what we need ourselves to be: curious, wary, compassionate, firm. Behind her, The Janus gleamed, a vessel once birthed for war, now mothership of an age of deliberate evolution. Stars overhead shimmered, spectra still bearing extra lines of song. Somewhere distant, new seeds hatched, whispering for guidance. Engines thrummed, strings vibrated, wings glowed. In chorus older than words and younger than tomorrow, humanity and its allies answered, not as conquerors, not as martyrs, but as gardeners of contradiction, sworn to tend the wild garden they had helped set free. And across the endless night the galaxy exhaled, still vast, still dangerous, but undeniably alive with possibility.